Hey guys, this is Mayank, founder of SwiftAnytime.com, and I welcome you to the 15th episode of the Mayank Show. And in this episode, we're going to talk to Ravi, popularly known as CodeCat15. If you haven't watched his videos yet on YouTube, then please do go and check out his videos on YouTube. I've provided the link to his channel in the description down below. But before that, check out this episode where we have discussed a lot of things with Ravi about clean coding, coding principles, good practices, and whatnot. So if you are someone who is into iOS and who is constantly trying to get better at what they do and to get more responsible about whatever they do, then I would highly recommend you to watch this video till the end. So without any further ado, let's run the intro. Welcome Ravi to the Mayank Show. Ravi is popularly known as CodeCat15 on YouTube. He has been creating a lot of content on iOS development, but recently I got to know that Ravi is not just an iOS developer. He has been playing with a lot of other technologies as well. And today in this podcast, we'll be getting to know a lot about Ravi, the CodeCat15. And without any further ado, I'll just go to Ravi. Ravi, welcome to the podcast once again.
All right, thank you, Mike. So first of all, thank you for having me to your show. And I'll start with my introduction. Thank you. My name is Ravi, and I've been into the IT field for about the past 10 to 12 years. And it's been a fun ride so far. I was a ASP.NET developer, and then I switched to iPhone. And that was a funny story because in 2010, I was just walking down my company, and I saw this lady. She was playing with the iPhone 4 simulator, and I asked my boss, like, okay, what is that? Because I've been doing some Nokia game development at that point, but I never seen something like that. And my boss said, like, okay, that's the iPhone simulator. And I was like, okay, what's an iPhone? and my boss said, you don't know iPhone? I was like, no. And it's like, oh, we use Objective-C to make apps, and that's Apple operating system. I was like, whoa, what are you talking about?
Okay,
explain it to me simply. So I went to the lady and I just I asked her, okay, what do you do? And then she kind of like showed me, like, this is Objective-C and this is what we do and all that. And I was like pretty much fascinated because the overall experience and looking at Mac for the very first time, I think that was Snow Leopard that I was looking at. And in 2000, yeah. So I was looking at that operating system and I was fascinated by it. And I was like, wow. And in 2009, when things were not looking good for the IT industry, I was on the verge of losing my job. Thanks to recession.
It was recession time, yeah.
Yeah, it was a recession time. Recession at that time. And I told to my boss, like, hey, I can upgrade my skills to this iPhone thing that you have showed me. And my boss was like, okay, sure, why not? And at that point, I had a Dell laptop and I installed Hackintosh.
Hackintosh.
Yeah, which sometimes it screwed up my motherboard. But it was worth it, man. It was worth it. It was worth the effort. It was worth the effort. I explored Objective-C, which was very painful because at 2009, I think Apple released the SDK in 2007 or something. And during that point, even the Apple documentation was not very well written. It was like all like, Apple assumed that some PhD degree holder will be reading this document. And I was not the brightest bulb at that point, and I was looking at the document. This is not making sense to me. But then trial and error went on, and I kind of like, okay, I started making adding 2 plus 2, and then all right. Soon I was playing with table delegates.
Right.
Yeah, and it was fun. I mean, exploring the iOS environment was fun because I was also writing the APIs for my application. So that the ASP.NET experience came handy when I had to prepare the database and do the APIs.
I think that also gives you a next level edge because you are able to not just create the front end, but also you're just looking after the whole application from back end to front end, and you have
exactly
full control over what you're trying to do.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly, and that was something that the team that I was put on, they really liked it. That okay, somebody is from the mobile domain. That
Yeah.
person understands the mobile ecosystem and what we
Right.
need, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like gave me the requirements, like this is what we want, and
Mm-hmm.
accordingly, I used to go make the APIs, and soon I kind of like realized that then Android came in to the picture,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And then we were like, okay, now you have to make APIs for Android and iPhone both, and it was really fun doing that because I think the mobile team really liked me because they can talk to someone who was pretty much approachable at that point, and
Right.
yeah, that was the edge.
So at that time you were in India, right? Like working with
That
some
time,
company
yes.
here in India.
This was 2009. I was in Pune. I started my career in Pune in a startup, and
Okay.
at that point, I was teaching. I enjoy teaching because
Which
it's
subject were you
fun.
teaching back then?
I was teaching C programming at that point,
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
and
I was
soon.
expecting data structures. I don't know why.
No, I wish, but data structure DSA is a humongous ocean, right?
Yeah.
And I've been
Yes.
talking to my subscribers on Discord and on Instagram, and I'm thinking I was talking to them saying that okay, if I create some courses on DSA,
Yeah.
what do you want me to add in those courses?
Include.
And the
Yeah.
list was crazy, like reverse a
Hmm.
binary tree, node, list, memory, blah blah blah, and it was humongous because if you look at a simple topic and then you go
Yeah.
into the details of it, and then you realize that one simple topic itself is huge, right?
That's true. You'll have to break
And
it down into 4 or 5 videos
exactly,
just to make
exactly,
it
and
make sense. Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Sorry.
and and then I started with C programming initially, and then when I kind of like leveraged Objective C, I started teaching Objective C. And
Okay.
soon I found myself teaching the basics of object-oriented programming and Objective-C, and I loved
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the only problem with that was I wanted to be a developer, and
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I was becoming more of a faculty. I didn't want that,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
I didn't want that, so I quit my job, found a new company, and over there I was the senior developer. Uh, but somehow they came to know that okay, this guy was a
Mm-hmm.
faculty, and so why not leverage him in teaching the new joinees? And that's okay, like being a senior developer, you train you train the new joinees, and teach them the company
Yeah.
standards and everything,
Yeah.
writing test cases and all that fun stuff. Um, but then what happened was again, I was slowly put on taking batches for college students, and I talked with my boss that
Okay.
this is not what I want.
Yeah.
Please
You want
don't,
to be a core developer, right? In the
yeah,
first
and
place. Then nothing
yeah, and
else.
the problem with that was the reason why I said that I don't want to do that is because I was the senior developer. My team is relying on me to deliver something because they're stuck, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if they're stuck, whom do they look to? Because I'm busy taking batches, right? So they have to wait. They can't interrupt,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. True.
And that was when I realized when a project was escalated and we almost lost the project, and the entire team had to burn the midnight
Because
oil.
of these
And
reasons.
I was not there, right? I being a
Okay.
senior developer,
Yeah.
I was not there. My team had to wait a little late,
Hmm.
and my Saturdays and Sundays were almost going into the garbage because I was not
Hmm.
I was not having any personal time for me. So at that point, I
Right.
kind of like told my boss that either you stop me from, either you don't put me in patches or
Yeah.
this, you decide what do you want from
What are your
from where are you,
expectations with me,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, what are your expectations? Because I cannot be at two places. And at that point, the
True.
students who were my students, they were like, we want Ravi sir to teach us. And I, and
Ravi sir kind of became Anand sir of Super 30 batch, where
it
he's
was
kind of, yeah.
I. and then the company started giving me royalties for that. And I was like, if you take this patch, I'll give you royalty. I was like, no, I don't want royalties. I want to be a
Mm.
developer. Don't put me in all these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And soon then I had to again shift.
Okay.
So again, in a new company, I joined in as a full stack and a mobile developer. So from
Okay.
there, my full stack journey began.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How about like you starting off your journey in full stack, and
hmm
like how did this gradual shift happen when you moved from India to US, and
hmm
for what reasons? Like what did you see, like the thing which made you you know make this decision in the first place?
So, oh, that's a good question. So what happened was I was working with this company and they had this project in Xamarin, which looking at the requirements and the complexity, I personally did not want to go with Xamarin, but then the way Xamarin was advertised was, one Xamarin forms typically, like
Hmm.
you have one code base and it runs anywhere, right? Typically with any
Okay.
hybrid or
Yeah.
cross-platform tool. And then we had to, and then it hit us hard because it
Hmm.
was, we were having performance issues and stuff, and I was like clearing off those performance issues, and the client was very pleased with my work, and so was the management. So they
Hmm.
said that, okay, how about we send you to this location? And at that point, I had no idea what is H1B visa, how does this entire shift works, what
Yeah.
do I have to do, and what is the payment structure of a regular developer in US, right? Of
Hmm.
a particular experience.
Yeah.
I I never got that particular guidance. And when I looked online, looking at online, the entire information is so messed up and
Hmm.
it is so wrong. Now when I read those information, I was like, man, that's not right. That's not right. That's not how it happens. No.
Yeah.
So the client then agreed to, said the client actually approved it. Said like, okay, fine.
Hmm.
The company and client both agreed that okay, we'll have Ravi fly to US and for this particular project.
Okay.
And I was okay. I said, okay, fine. Let me see how the grass is on the other side.
Yeah.
Um, and then I flew to New York uh, for this particular project of Xamarin Forms. Worked on it, and then my company said, okay, we'll send your resume to the other companies, and it was more like a contracting thing. I
Okay.
was like, I was pretty much okay with that. So first, I was being interviewed as an iOS developer, but then
Okay.
the company said like, let's market you as a full stack developer, and
Hmm.
then I got more opportunities because I had more technologies to show in my resume, like ASP.NET, JavaScript, and then SQL, C Sharp, and whatnot, right?
Hmm.
And then I cracked the interview of a company in Omaha, which is Omaha, Nebraska,
Okay.
and been here for 5 years, and that's pretty good.
And
Yeah.
how is it going? Like, what kind of culture shift have you observed there, if you compare it to, working here in India? Like, have there been any certain shifts that you have observed, or is it like
Yeah,
almost the same?
major, no, major. There's like a major shift that I have observed because in India I have worked in startups, mid-size MNCs. I worked as a contractor, and in over here as well, I've did pretty much the same thing. But
Hmm.
there is a massive shift in how things are done here as well as how things are done back in India.
Hmm.
One of the things that I've observed here is if I approach you with a requirement like, okay, Mike, this is the project that we are working on. These are the modules. What are you going to do? You don't say, okay, this is the module, and I'm just gonna keyboard it
Code this
out.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't do that. You don't do that here. We kind of like talk. How are we going to solve this? What is, for example, if I'm talking about a login screen, right?
Right.
Uh, we don't see that login as one module. We kind of like
Mhm.
ask questions like, what is the core functionality of this screen? Obviously, we are seeing that that's a login screen. We know what the core
Yeah.
functionality is, but then
Yeah.
tell me more about the core functionality of this screen. Is it what what is going to be the length of the password. Can the user log in by using other identities like Google, Twitter, or LinkedIn and
Okay.
stuff like that?
Okay.
What are the authentication that a person is going to use? Is there going to be some roles like an admin logs in, or when a user logs in? What is the expectations of the
Mhm.
next screen? Will when a user logs in, are we going to store the auth token, or is it going to be session based logout or something? So we go into
Right.
the nitty gritty details,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what happens is when an audit happens, and audit is both basically done by a third party company, and then when they come
Okay.
when they review the code and everything, and if they find some issues, that's a
Mm-hmm.
problem. That's a big problem,
Mm.
because
Okay.
then the entire team is held accountable. So we kind of
Right.
like discuss all this thing first, and then we draw a sequence diagram. Okay, what's going to happen? We kind of like look at uh, the cloud resources that we'll be using. Like
Mhm.
if you're using it, mostly I work in Azure, so we
Okay.
kind of like draw the diagram, or draw a detailed design of what are the resources that we'll be using, and and certain things. What's the database and certain things like that.
Hmm.
But if you kind of like, there's also one more thing is code reviews and
Okay.
solid principles.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about it like for many hours
You
and
can
still be
go.
going at it. Um, whenever we do the code review, we observe like, what is this function name? Is it making sense? And
Yeah.
because the idea of code review is like, when I'm going through the code, it should not raise an eyebrow. Like, okay, what is this? Right? For
Hmm.
example, if I'm using if I'm writing the variable name let x equals to, you know whatever formulas and everything, what is
Mm-hmm.
that x? Makes no sense,
Yeah.
right? It has to be, that variable name should make sense, that function name should make sense,
Right.
and then comes solid principles, right?
Yeah. The
Is this
main part,
function
I
doing
think.
too many things?
I get it. Even I have observed this specifically here that
Hmm.
many beginner level iOS developers don't even know about solid principles, even
Right.
after working for 1 year or so. So that's again a lack, I think, in the process. That can be fixed.
I think what I personally have observed is, um, it's back in the days when I was in India.
Hmm.
And this was a shift. I didn't knew what solid principle was, and I think I came to know about solid principles when I was like, I was having 4+ years experience.
Yeah.
Um, my schedule was so hectic, and I was so,
Mhm.
I was so tense, and I was so stressed out working in multiple projects, that I was like, maybe this is going to be my life for the next 20-30 years. This is how it's going to be, right?
Hmm. Right.
And that thing scared me. I mean, people, they proudly say that bro, I'm working for 15 hours, I'm working for 17 hours, and I was like, no, that's not right, man.
Hustlers.
That's crazy. How?
Yeah.
What? I mean, that to me, that thing never made any sense, because it kind of like takes a toll on your health, which is not good.
Right.
And the so what I thought was like, okay, let me pause for a second, and then I
Hmm.
saw, okay, what are people doing all over the globe? Is this what they do? Like, they code for 12, 13, 14 hours?
Hmm.
And then I came across a book by Robert C. Martin, which is The Clean Coder, which was like a very short,
Okay.
I think 400, 500 pages. And I said, okay, let me take my time and go through this book and see what's going on.
Okay.
And I read that book, and I was like, oh my God, this book describes my pain, agony,
Mhm.
suffering, stress, and everything. And it also talks about the clean coding principles that a
Yeah.
developer should worry about. Getting more into clean coding and principles, design patterns. When to use design patterns is specifically very important, because I've seen a trend
Right.
that people, just to
Fall for
be,
a certain pattern.
yeah, they're like, okay, if I use this pattern, I'll be the cool developer. I've seen people
Right.
suggesting like, oh, bro, let's use Viper plus RX shift. I was like, no, that's
I
insanity.
was about to
Don't
say,
do that.
Viper is somewhat like, as if you are flaunting something.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like, oh, look, I have the new iPhone 13 Pro Max. And I was like, no,
It's like
that's
that. Yeah, that's true.
I was like, no, dude, that's not it. That's not how you do things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think what the problem over here is developers uh, who use a pattern when it's not necessary at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think they abusing the pattern rather than using it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that has been the problem for me. Because let's say if you use a particular pattern, so say for example if you're using factory pattern, if I say no, factory pattern solves a particular problem, but when I
Okay.
analyze the code and I see that okay, we should be using the strategy pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
technically, you and I should discuss what makes sense, right?
Exactly.
Because to
Exactly.
me, I want to use a pattern. Yes, I completely get it. Why do you want to use a pattern? But what is more maintainable?
Hmm.
Is it
Right. And what
factory?
is the requirement of that situation, like in that
Exactly,
scenario? Yeah.
exactly. Because I have worked on maintenance project a lot in my career, in my 12 years career. I have rarely got uh, few opportunities to work on a project from the get-go, from the start, where I am in total control, right?
Okay.
And I think people who get a lot of opportunities to work on projects from the scratch, they are very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it is always I look at other people's code and I was like, okay, how I should not be coding, because you look at other people's code and then you kind of like get more experience. Okay, I should not be
Right.
doing this, right?
Right.
So that's where this entire thing is coming from. When I looked at what other people are doing, I read a lot of books on clean coding, and I'm still learning, going through the process of how my code should be maintainable. Because at the end of the day, your code will be maintained by either you, or it will
Yeah.
be maintained by a different team, right? And and if the maintenance team or you yourself, after 6 7 months, if you're looking at your own code
Mm-hmm.
and if you are saying like, who the hell wrote this? And then you and then you scroll up and you look at, oh, it was commented, it was this code was added by Ravi. I was like, ah, man, it was me.
And that
Yep,
happens.
that
It's the
happens.
story of every
Yes,
developer, I believe.
that happens. That happens. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I always looked up to is like, how can I make my code more maintainable?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into fancy patterns. I'm not into anything. I just want to make my code simple and maintainable, because
Yeah.
it's going to be me who's going to end up maintaining that particular code base, or some maintenance guy. So I did my research. I tried implementing some solid principles in my code, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes time, right? It's not like you're going to read this today, or
Yeah.
watch a video about single responsibility, or dependency inversion, and
Yeah.
you'll know these concepts. No, it takes years and years of practice. It takes years
How
and
should
years of
somebody go
implementation.
about it? Like if somebody is listening to this right now,
Mhm.
how should they go about it if they haven't yet, learned this solid pattern?
I would say be very strict with yourself, and if look, start with your code, your own code, right? Not with client projects. Client projects is a different thing. I
Hmm.
have always said in my YouTube videos that do not experiment with client projects, because client projects are ticking time bombs. If something
Yeah.
goes wrong, you'll hit the deadline, and if you have not submitted things, there can be problem, right? You won't get the appraisal of March that you're looking at. So I would say you must be having some side projects of your own, and try to implement those patterns in those side projects and see what makes sense. Because the more you practice, the more you implement it, the more you'll look at the code, and you'll easily be able to identify that okay, this is a red flag. This should not be here. And
Yeah.
apart from solid principles, there are many other principles like dry print, that is, don't repeat yourself, right?
Yeah.
And keep it simple. That's another
Hmm.
principle that I always
Hmm.
consider to follow when I'm looking at my code, right?
Okay.
And
I think
one of the mistakes, I'm sorry to interrupt. One of the
no, no, no.
mistakes that I personally did in my earlier days was like, I was when I was writing code and I knew about these concepts, I was like, maybe this is fine. That's okay. We don't need single responsibility here. But
Yeah.
then that thing bit me when I tried to when I was doing the maintenance. I was like, okay, now I have to make
Hmm.
a huge change. to make sure this code is following solid principles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that you're telling me right now are some things which we miss out when we are learning development, basically, right? So
Yeah.
basically, you would find that these days people learn, not just people, I'm talking about students learn development in their college days itself, right? Or maybe even before that. Like it starts from even schools itself these days. I have seen that happening.
Oh,
So,
okay.
uh, how can somebody make sure that when they start off with their journey into development, I think
Hmm.
these kind of principles also follow into other field as well, not just in iOS but in
Yep.
other technologies as well. So
Exactly.
what kind of roadmap they should follow so that they eventually and gradually become a better developer?
What makes more sense is being a responsible developer.
Hmm.
Now, I can tell you what a responsible developer does. A responsible developer looks at the module. A responsible developer will ask questions before they even begin writing the code. A responsible developer will create a sequence diagram. A responsible developer will create a skeleton model of its classes, like, okay, how is my data going to pass from one layer to the other layer. A responsible
Yeah.
developer will never ever ever do decomposition based on the functionality. A responsible developer will always do decomposition based on volatility.
Mm-hmm.
A responsible developer will always write test cases,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to me, if you're doing all of these, I think you're being a responsible person. You're being a responsible developer. Take it like this. Uh, let's say a doctor, right? If he's operating on a patient, and if the doctor makes a mistake, what do you call that doctor? A good doctor, a bad doctor, a better doctor, a irresponsible doctor?
If that see again, now we can have perspectives in this case. If that doctor is making those kind of mistakes like for long, then obviously we'll call that person a irresponsible person or a doctor, right? But if
Right.
that happened with him for the very first time, or maybe randomly that happened to him by some mistake, so you cannot call him irresponsible like completely as a professional. uh, it was just that one day when that kind of thing happened, right?
To me, what I think is, uh, yes, mistakes do happen, but to me, that doctor is pretty irresponsible, because I think if you're not doing your job right, you should, if you're feeling like under the weather or something, you should not probably be in the dispensary or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, I mean, my mentor always told me that, okay, how many bugs would you like to have in your project? I was like, well, what kind of question is that? And
How many
he said,
bugs about?
yeah, I mean, he said, okay, I know that you can write code and everything. And I was like, but yeah, tell me how many, tell me the margin of error that is
Right.
acceptable for you, because after a few years, you're going to be the tech lead, or you're going to be the senior developer or architect. So
Yeah.
how much error will you allow in your project? And then I was thinking like, okay, maybe, I don't know, 10% or 5%. And
Mm-hmm.
my mentor was so angry with me. He was not happy at all. And he said, how about 0%? And
Hmm.
I was like, but then errors do happen, right? Mistakes do happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then he kind of like said to me that, then that means you're not being professional. Or maybe the requirement
Hmm.
wasn't clear to you, and that's the reason why that error popped in, right? Maybe you did not write enough test
Yeah.
cases. Maybe you did not ask the right questions, right? And that's the reason why I always strive to be more responsible while I'm coding. I ask the silliest questions because I don't want to assume things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because problems do happen when you start assuming things. When you say that, oh, I thought this was like this, and now
Yeah.
based on that assumption, when you code, when you deliver it to the QA, yeah, you're wasting the time of QA. You're wasting the time of the person who is reviewing your code. You're wasting a lot of time, because that thing is
Right.
going to come back at you saying that
Right.
this was not the requirement. So
Hmm.
I always tend to
True.
ask questions, and I always tend to encourage people to ask more and more questions when they're looking at a user story. There should be no assumptions. There should be no margin for error. You should always strive to have 0% bugs in your software, because mostly, as coming back to the doctor analogy, is let's say accidentally, maybe the doctor was not feeling right. He cuts a vein, and that vein is supplying blood to my heart. What
Hmm.
happens? I'm dead.
Yeah, the
I
person
saw,
is no more.
yeah, the person is no more. So how can you, how can somebody say that, okay, maybe the doctor was feeling, it's okay, sorry, I'm not coming back to life again because, accidents happen. No, there was a very good
No,
case
that's
there was a very good case of this thing happening with the software industry. And that's a case in India, I'll tell you.
uh-huh.
I think there was some exams going on, and
Okay.
what happened was it was an online exam, and the people when they submitted the paper, right? What happened was there was a bug in the software, and
Okay.
what happened was uh, people who were who passed with distinction, they
Yeah.
failed. And
Oh.
yeah, and what happened is many students could not take it, and they committed suicide, right? And then what happened when the family member said that, okay, no, I don't, my kid was like very studious, and they
Hmm.
they said that, okay, let's reevaluate this. They
Hmm.
reevaluated the paper. The kid scored
And found
distinction.
that.
Yeah,
Oh.
the kid scored distinction. Now the kid is no more. So this is why even the software engineers have to be more cautious when they say that, okay, it is done, right? You have to test every use case. You have to test every scenario. You have to write test cases. You do not write code based on assumptions, because then
Hmm.
bad things
That's true.
happen. Because then bad
Yeah.
thing happens, right? So that
True.
has been my what do you call it, bar of when I say a user story is done. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I do make mistakes, and that's the reason why we have code reviews. But in the code reviews, I make very sure from my case, from my side, that even if a review is coming, it is just minor things like, okay, this variable should be named like that, or hey, how about using this function in Swift because Swift has this function. And I was like,
Right.
okay, yeah, sure, why not? So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm. No, I get it. Like, I think I really got this point where we got, we were taking this example of this examination and, what the consequence was. I think considering that case, obviously, like, there should be no scope of these things happening
exactly,
with even, you know,
exactly.
the
And
softwares.
even if
Yeah.
the case, even if Mike, even if the case, for example, let's say today you're working in some social media you're making some social media apps, and issues happen in that. So let's say you miss
Yeah.
something, and that's okay. Nobody's life is going to depend on it. But let's say you're working
True.
for a bank, and you're working on
Ah,
the
yeah.
transaction model,
Now I get it.
right? So you're working on the transaction module. So rather than,
Yeah.
if something goes wrong, then that's a problem, because now that bug has caused an impact on somebody's life,
Right. Yeah.
right? It has
That's true.
caused pain.
That's, that's
And
true.
in the actual definition of a software is to make somebody's life easy. This is how I understand it, right?
Yeah.
And if a software is not making my life easy, it's useless to me.
True. True.
Yeah,
Hmm. I think that's a great takeaway. Anyone can learn from this conversation that uh, set your bars very high. Like, don't
exactly.
fall for, okay, I have a scope of 1% of bugs coming up in my code. Make sure
No,
from your side that there is 0% scope of that thing happening. Even if that happens after that, then there are always some things that are not in your control. But from your side, you should be assured that I have done everything possible that I
exactly.
could
No,
have done in that case.
now one more thing that I have got into the habit with the recent years is I go back to my old user stories which I've completed, and
Okay.
I just randomly test them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to see if they're working fine. And I just, whenever I'm having spare time, I look at the code and I say, okay, maybe I
Okay.
can improve this code to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not. And if I can, then I add a story in my backlog saying that, okay, this can be improved, or, whatever the verbiage you like.
Mm-hmm.
Because today you know something, right? Today you
Mm-hmm.
have knowledge based on Swift UI or combine whatever you have learned so far, right? Maybe 15 days later, you'll get more knowledge and you'll come back to the code and you'll improvise it, right?
True.
You'll make it more faster. So that's what I've got into the habit of, if I have time, I just test out my old modules and look at my code and see if I can improve something, if I can make the code more readable or add some comments in general. I do things like that.
I think that's more of a
Yeah.
mindset. Like what I can get from this conversation is it's not just about following a certain rule. It's more of about how
Mhm.
you think about things in general. Also, I
Exactly.
like from this I can also say maybe I'm right about this, that in your life also you keep the same approach with the things, right? You try to
Yep.
make sure that everything is up to the mark according to your standards.
Now I have
So
a Yeah, now I have
yeah,
a good analogy of it. Say, for example, let's say you're buying a house, right? What do you
okay,
buy a house? We do so much research, right? Okay,
true,
what is the tax that I'm going to pay? Okay, are there any hospitals nearby? What is the security and what? No, you check every micro details of
yeah,
the place where you're going to live. What is the crime rate? Okay, which is the nearest police station, and many things like that,
yeah,
right? Uh, do you do the same for your project, your software code? Maybe, maybe not.
yeah,
Uh, or maybe
depends.
it's more like, well, it's code at the end of the
Just
day.
doing it.
Compiler
Yeah,
doesn't care if I write a function of 400 lines or 30
yeah.
lines. Who cares, right?
Hmm.
There's a great quote by Martin Flower who said that you write code not for the computer but for humans, and uh,
Ah, right.
and I've taken that quote too personally.
Very
Like,
serious.
okay, fine.
No, that's great. I mean, I think I'm meeting someone for the very first time who has these kind of standards set for himself. Um, and it's somewhat sometimes sense that okay, maybe we are doing a lot, but at the end when it makes sense, like we took some examples and it actually convinced me to agree with you on this approach, right? uh, so yeah, I think it was not just great learning for anyone who is listening to this podcast right now, but also for me personally, because even I used to think about this, that okay, when we code there are like we are bound to get some bugs, right? We
Right,
think like
right,
that in the
right.
first place. So I think this is a great takeaway for me in this conversation. Thanks for convincing me on this approach.
Thank you. Well, I'm very much happy to assist you on that.
Great. So how come like we have been talking about code for a while? I'd like to
Mhm.
ask you like how did YouTube happen in between? Like you have been
Oh
creating
boy.
videos for
Yeah.
quite a few years now. So how did this take place?
Okay. So there's a fun story behind this. So me and my friends, we were talking about Azure durable functions. They are serverless functions,
Okay.
and we were just discussing like how we can improvise this and how we should be handling error, doing diagnostics and stuff like that. And I gave a pretty uh, weird and then more close to life examples. And then this was like the time when we were having all the lockdown and everything. And at that point my friends were like, "Oh, man, maybe you should start a YouTube channel." And I was like, "No, I'm not doing
Mm-hmm.
that." And
Mm-hmm.
because I know that the amount of work that it needs, and it's kind of like a job on its own,
Yeah.
right? It's
People are
pretty
actually doing it
stressful.
like a job these days.
Exactly. And if I create a YouTube channel, I don't want to be another, YouTube channel which kind of like touches only the surface of the topic. I want to go into
Hmm.
the actual microscopic
Depth of
details of
it.
it,
Yeah.
right? And if I'm not doing that, I said to myself, if I'm not going to do that, I am not going to start my YouTube channel. And initially, I
Hmm.
thought maybe I'll start a YouTube channel on C Sharp, ASP.NET, and Azure.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought like, hmm, what do I like most? It was Swift.
Hmm.
So I said,
Hmm.
okay, let me get back to Swift, and I started with Swift, and uh, it was like, friends were saying, do it, do it, do it, and I was like, no, 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 and it's like, just do it. And I told him, like, even if 20 people subscribe, I'll make the next video. And if you look at
Okay.
my, yeah, if you look at my first video, it's pretty casual. I think it's the most unprofessional thing that I've ever did. Uh, it is like I'm speaking so casually, like, yeah, this is a variable, and you do this and that, and blah blah, and boom, there you go, your
Mm-hmm.
output is there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, there were like 30 subscribers.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, I'll make the next video. And video after video, when I started, you know, getting into the details, I started
Yeah.
enjoying this. It became more of a hobby. And to my surprise, what happened, which actually made put a smile on my face every time, is whenever people, the first comment that I got, like, because of your channel, I got a job. And
Yeah.
those were tough times in pandemic, when we were having the lockdown and everything, where people were losing the jobs. And
Yeah.
you get people, some developers were sending me the offer letters, that, hey, look at this 3 offer letters that I've got. And I was like, wow, the channel is making a, a
Great
good
impact.
impact.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like promised myself that if I am going to put a video, it will be detailed, or I'm not going to put it. And I've took a lot of topics, and when I do the editing section, I listen to what I'm saying as a third person in my head, and I said,
Okay.
okay, no, this is not making sense, so I don't post that video. Because now
Okay.
it's more like somewhere in my head, it's more like a responsibility, as in the channel is creating an impact.
Yeah.
And uh, and it should be quality driven, and not
Hmm.
just like any other concept, like, okay, you want to do database, singletons. Why singletons?
Hmm.
Why not repository?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And doing that technical comparison is very important. Like, for some people, it is when you talk about, hey, you can just use MVC or MVVM, but why MVC? Why MVVM? When to use MVC? When to use MVVM? What is making
True.
sense? Right? Um,
Yeah.
this is the route that I took. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really happy that the outcome that people are saying that, okay, we got a job and everything. And I was like, yep, I think that's a win for me, and that's a win for my channel. So that's it.
That's awesome. So, what
Yeah.
are your plans with the YouTube channel now? Like, will you keep doing it like a hobby, or would you take it more serious and maybe try your hands into more technology, since you have a like lot of stack behind you, I believe. So, I think you can even create. I know the approach is what this approach is. You just don't want to create a bunch of videos just for the sake of creating videos. You want to bring
Exactly.
some value.
I
That's true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you can expand your horizon in that, and start creating more value with other technologies as well. So,
Right.
like, there are many channels, I would not name anyone, but who have been doing this. And I
Yep.
think, again, when I look at their videos, I find the same thing happening that you said. They are just touching the surface layer, and you
Hmm.
know people are missing out that in-depth knowledge in those topics.
Right. And to add to your point, Mike, you bring a very interesting point. As in, there was one video which my subscriber gave it to me on Instagram,
Hmm.
and he said, Ravi, can you check this video? And he put the exact timeline. You can skip the all part. You can just check this.
Okay.
And I looked at that video, and I saw that the person was adding a reference of table view inside the view model.
Okay.
And I immediately stopped, and I looked at the like and comments and everything. That video had like 20,000 views, and a
Wow.
lot of comments. And then I was like, wow. So 20,000 people have learned a bad implementation of MVVM. And in the
Exactly.
comment section, I'm looking at it, and I'm reading that this is magnificent. This is, the chef's kiss.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is how bad practices
Because
spread.
learners don't know what is right or wrong, right? Like,
Exactly.
they are there because they are there to learn. So if somebody is
Exactly.
teaching them, then they will take it
The
like anything,
assumption,
just like
the assumption is that whatever the YouTuber or the blogger is saying, it is always right. And I
exactly.
have always said in my channel, and even on my Instagram, that do not believe everything that you see. Practice it out, see if it makes sense in your use
Yeah.
case, and then implement it. right? See what are the good practices. If you're learning
Yeah.
a particular topic, see what are the good practices, what are the pros and cons, and then perhaps maybe you want to take a call on whether you want to implement this or not, right?
Right. Right. So what's your plan now then?
I am taking a break from YouTube actually,
Okay.
because uh, recently there is something that I want to learn, right?
Oh,
And
nice. What is that? Is it in
well,
iOS or something?
it's coming back to a technology which I left in well, not technology but a framework that I left in 2016. Now it has come back to haunt me. It is Angular.
Okay. Ah,
Uh,
okay.
it is, yeah, it's Angular and TypeScript. TypeScript is something which I've been doing, but then there are some things with Angular which have changed.
Okay.
So I initially worked with Angular JS, which was like the you know pre-released 1.0 version,
Mm-hmm.
1.0 version of Angular JS, and then right now I'm looking at Angular 13 and seeing like what are the changes and what optimization can I do. So I actually need time for that, because
Yeah.
that is something that I'll be using in my project. And
Mm-hmm.
since we are using Agile, everything is time box, everything is a ticking time bomb, and I don't want to be the one that is called slacker. So
Nice. That's
yeah.
nice.
So coming back to the original question, like what is the plan? The
Yeah.
plan is in the coming days when I'm a little, I get a little breather, right? Maybe I'll come back with more combined videos. I know there are a lot of subscribers who have been asking for push notifications, CICD
Mm-hmm.
pipelines, and this
I think
year,
CI/CD is something which is like nobody is really, talking about CI/CD that much, apart from those videos which talks about certain third parties, right?
right?
Just to promote those companies. Otherwise,
Yes, yes,
not
yes.
anyone like I have not seen anyone being serious about CI/CD and then making a complete playlist
Well,
on that.
well, here's the thing. Here, let me ask you this: Do you think CIC? Do you think creating a pipeline is the job of a developer, or is it the job of somebody from the DevOps team?
Yeah, it's from like it should be the job of the person from the DevOps team, definitely. But when we work in a very small team, right?
Hmm.
Since it's like startups are booming these days, and the headcount, what is the general
Oh yeah,
headcount these days?
definitely, definitely. It's
So in that scenario, sometimes it helps you to
hmm.
even cooperate with DevOps guys. Even if you have just one or two guy in the team, and sometimes responsibilities are
Right,
divided in such a way that even you have to bring something
right,
up from your side. Then it helps.
right. Completely agree to your point, but then there is another point as well.
Yeah.
To me, when you create a pipeline, right? I've done the same, right? I know how to operate in Azure, and I've created pipelines for iOS apps and Angular and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then again, whenever you're promoting your code from a lower environment to a higher environment, as in you're promoting your code from dev to QA, and then after QA you have stage and then production. Uh, I think on higher environments you should have some security. Like a developer cannot approve something
Hmm.
directly on production, right?
Yeah, that's
So
true.
to know if you're a developer who is looking into the pipelines in a startup or in
Yeah.
your organization, then
Yeah.
here's one small tip from me, that please make sure that if a build fails, if your project is not having test cases, if a test case fails, um, do not approve that particular build. Please
Hmm.
make sure that you do have a security on the higher environments, as in on stage, which is also called as pre-production, and on
Hmm.
production, the code should only and only be approved by the project manager, right?
Right.
Uh, I know that different companies have different different approaches to this, but then I would say that if it's a higher environment, then it should not be the developer, it should not be the QA, it should be the BA and all
Right.
the management team in general.
Yeah. True that.
Yeah.
I
And
think we
also,
both kind of, yeah, are
yeah,
right here on this point where
yeah,
If you look at the ideal case, it should be done in that way, which you are explaining. And if you look at the not so ideal scenario,
Hmm.
then even in that case, you should at least have
Yeah,
some
not so
basic
ideal.
idea.
Yeah, not so ideal scenario is just have two environments, dev and production. If it works in dev, ship it. Uh,
Yeah.
and one more thing which I would like to add over here is, since you're talking about pipelines, is code
Yeah.
coverage.
Hmm.
Uh, Code coverage is one thing that. Uh,
What's that? I haven't heard that name before.
no, okay. So when you write test cases, right?
Okay.
So when you basically write test cases, what happens is, there is a percentage which is generated by the test
Hmm.
runner. That
Hmm.
percentage is basically what are the areas of in your code which is tested by the test cases,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And some companies have a principle that it should be 90% or above. Some have 75 to 80%. I would
Okay.
say, I would say basically aim for somewhere between 75 to 80% is, I would say, it's decent. It's not good,
Mhm.
it's decent.
You
Uh,
know what I
but
was expecting? I was expecting that you would say you should approach for 100%.
well, yes, if you
Yeah.
read Uncle Bob's book, if you read
Yeah.
Robert C. Martin's book, he has clearly stated that it should be 100%. And in one of
Yeah.
my projects, in one of my API projects, I have achieved it.
Nice.
I have tested the controllers. I have tested each and every things,
Wow.
in each and every layer in my project. And
Hmm.
I think the team actually did a pretty decent job. I think we had around about how much 8,500 something test cases for that API.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what are your plans now, Ravi? With the things that you are doing, like I know you have been doing
Hmm.
this job, you are, you know, passionate about what you're doing. That reflects in how you explain things. Like I can feel
Hmm.
that when you are into the explanation, I can, you know, feel that vibe coming from your side. So I would like to ask you, like, what's your next thing that you're going to do? Are you going to, you know, do something
Well,
new, or going
I
to expand this? What?
well, as of now, I would just stick with YouTube and teach about the clean coding principles uh, that's there. At least explain
Yeah.
the people that the basics of clean coding, because there is a kind of I think there is a misconception in the minds of the developer that writing clean code is a painful job, or it is like way too complicated. Well, it's not
Hmm.
complicated, it is very simple
Yeah.
things. It is when you're coding, just take a pen and paper and see how the data flow is. And that's what I've been showing in my videos. And
Nice.
maybe I'll just continue with Swift um, for now, and then maybe Swift UI in the future.
Hmm.
But what on a personal scale, what I am planning to do is improve my DSA, obviously.
Okay. Why
And
so?
then,
Like, is that the
because what
requirement you face
happens,
these days?
well, here's the thing: when you're into IT for a particular period of time, you kind of like
Hmm.
lose touch with the basics, right?
Right.
And what I have the habit is like I go back and I
And brush
scratch
up
the
those
surface of
topics.
yeah, and brush up those topics. Like for example, right now, if you catch any of your friends and say that, okay, write a program to print the Fibonacci series.
Hmm.
No,
They will
that's
like,
not gonna
pretty
that's not gonna
right?
happen. Well, I did this in college, but I do not remember this. What I do is like I revisit my old concepts, is because I want to make sure that I know the time space complexities, and I know the auxiliary space complexities and stuff like that, so that I can
Yeah.
code better, right?
Yeah.
Because I think in the future what's going to happen is like, obviously you can code, anybody can code, right? Even
Right.
a college student can also code, and an experienced developer can also code. But then what is the icebreaker, right?
True.
The icebreaker is writing optimized code. Obviously, if you write a particular code, it is going to work anyways. It is going to produce the output.
Hmm.
But
Right.
is it optimized? That's
Hmm.
a big
That's
question
the
mark,
main question.
right? And that's the reason why companies these days have started taking DSAs and hacker rank or lead code,
Yeah.
medium to hard questions based upon the years of experience that you have.
Yeah.
Uh, that's one of the reasons why I'm like looking into all of these to brush up my basics. And the second thing is like obviously if you can do some certain certifications, that would be awesome because right now I am I've been trying to prepare for some of the certifications of Azure, but
Okay.
my workload is so packed that I'm finding it way difficult to make time for this. But I'm pretty sure I can manage something out. So let's see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I keep on asking this question to each one of my guests, and I
Hmm.
will ask the same question to you. Do you have
Hmm.
any advice for your 18-year-old version?
Oh boy. Hmm. Advice to my 18-year. I'm pretty sure that 18-year-old self of mine is not going to listen to this advice. Um,
Was he reluctant to the advices?
Obviously, he was pretty immature at that point. But I would just say take things slowly. Don't
Yeah.
rush.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. And eventually, never be afraid of doing the right things. If
Mm,
if 100 or 1,000 people are against it, and if it is the right thing to do, just
that's
do it. Yeah.
mm, awesome. I think that's a beautiful message anyone can give to, I mean, this whole conversation has been a very insightful kind of conversation for me, where I, as a developer, have learned a lot of things from you, even from just I think 58 minutes of conversation, I believe.
Thank you.
And I think we can have these kind of conversations once again, like maybe a consecutive episode in which
Absolutely.
we will
Absolutely.
dig deeper into some of the things, some of the areas where we just went through and we didn't
Hmm.
uh, dig deeper into that because of these time
Sure. Yeah.
constraints. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I really loved talking to you about, because today I think I felt that covering all those podcasts till date, I think today was the
Mm.
day when I'm actually talking about technical things a lot. Otherwise, we keep
Hmm.
talking about these questions that people ask: how should you start your journey in iOS development? What are your blockers? What should be a go-to resource? And all of those things. I think
Right. Right.
many people have already answered them, and these
Right.
are some things which we discussed today are something which are like which you rarely find on YouTube, you know
Right. I
so
would also add to that one point, Mike, that many people also ask the same question to me that how we can write better code or how we can as you said start your journey
yeah.
as iOS. I would say that basically give yourself some time, like 2 months or
Mm,
3 months.
mm.
Just practice a lot. You are not going to learn iOS by just watching somebody
The
speak
videos.
about
Yeah.
speak about like hey this is the date picker or this is combine and
Right.
whatever things. You have to
Right.
practice. So I would say start with creating small applications like a calculator application, to-do list application, or maybe a finance calculator or something
Right.
like that, because these apps are going to give you more and more exposure to the UI, to the APIs, to maybe core data, and
Right.
maybe doing something with dispatch group, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also good to have it on your GitHub, and maybe you can show it in your portfolio that yeah, these are the apps that I worked on.
Yeah. That's really like having a good GitHub portfolio really works for you these days.
Yep,
So why not?
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
All right. On that note, I think Ravi, we can wrap up this episode here.
Yep.
And with that, like I would say, thank you so much once again for accepting my invite, taking out time from your schedule, and we finally made this happen. So again, I would
Absolutely.
say I'm glad about about this conversation. I was not expecting it to be this much technical, though I liked it.
Oh.
So I thought that I will, I'll shoot questions about you and how do you think about this or that. We kept on talking about these engineering things, and
Hmm.
usually I don't enjoy talking about engineering that much, but
Hmm.
talking to you, things coming from your side, through your experiences, I could relate a lot with that when we were talking about
Yeah.
bugs, the psychology
Oh yeah.
behind that, and all
Oh
of
yeah.
those things. It really impacted me in a positive way today. So
I'm
yeah,
glad.
thank you so much, for that,
But
and
thank you
I'll
so much for having
looking
me. Right.
I hope you enjoyed this one,
Yes,
and
I
I
did.
hope. Okay, good to know that. And I hope the audience also enjoyed this one. If you have liked it, guys, then you can like this video. There's this icon that you can press. And if you have any doubts that you want to ask Ravi, then you can directly message him on Twitter. I'll leave his Twitter handle in the description. You can find it there, or you can comment down in the video itself. I believe Ravi would be able to check that out as well.
Sure.
Either
Yes.
he will check that out, I'll send these questions to Ravi directly.
I'll be more
And
happy to respond to the comments.
awesome. And do consider subscribe to the channel if you want to listen to more such good podcasts, I believe. So yeah, thank you so much once again. That's all for now. See you in the next one.
See ya. Bye.